the nation's most impactful university system. The California State University is 23 world-changing campuses, driven by one mission above all, for all, unleashing potential.
It's what makes the CSU the educational powerhouse for California's new majority, where Californians from every walk of life find their voice, potential, and path.
It's where passion meets purpose, where students propel the world forward and themselves upward.
Powering the economy, strengthening our democracy, becoming beacons of pride and prosperity.
For their families, their communities, California, and the world.
Hello, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Daisy Navarrete, and I'm the Student Government President here at CSU Channel Islands. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from two top leaders from the California State University, CSU Chancellor Mildred García and CSU Board of Trustees Chair Fong. Both of these women have overcome incredible odds to reach the positions they are in today. As a first-generation college student myself, I'm fascinated to learn about the paths they took to get where they are today. I'd like to start by introducing them. CSU Chancellor Mildred García is the head of the 23-campus California State University system. She is the CSU's first Latina chancellor and the first Latina in the country to lead a 4-year public university system. Prior to being appointed as chancellor, she was president of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, as well as president of Cal State Fullerton and CSU Dominguez Hills, and has several other educational and academic leadership roles. She is a first-generation college student and the first in her family to earn a degree. CSU Board of Trustees Chair Fong is a veteran television producer and director. She has worked with some of the world's greatest artists and performers, 7 U.S. presidents, and a pope. And she was the first person of color and the first woman ever to produce the Emmy Awards. She is also the first Asian American chair of the CSU Board of Trustees. Chancellor Garcia and Chair Fong, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Daisy.
Thank you.
Could you each begin by sharing a bit about your background growing up and how it led to your lifelong appreciation of the importance of education? So let's start with Chancellor Garcia.
You know, my love for education started with my family. My parents came from Puerto Rico with my brothers and sisters and moved to Brooklyn, New York. They lived in this beautiful neighborhood, but it was a poor neighborhood. There were 2 tenements surrounded by factories, and my parents worked in those factories. And they came because they wanted a better life for their children. So my brother and I are those oops babies. And so we were born in, we're New Yorkers, as they say. And so they always told us, and I'm saying it in Spanish first, and I'm going to say it in English second. They always told us, la única herencia que una familia pobre le deja a sus hijos es una buena educación. The only inheritance a poor family can leave you is a good education. And they told us that all the time. They didn't want us to work in those factories. You know, it was interesting because my father became the president of what they call the Culebra Social Clubs. That's the island from which he comes in Puerto Rico. And they would get together and help those who are coming from the island to learn about schooling, learn about church, learn about neighborhoods. And I saw his leadership in going forward. And so I continued, and then unfortunately, my father passed away. And we had to move into the housing projects. And again, my mother kept on telling us education is the most important. But she gave me a really good gift. The gift for me was that she allowed me when I was 14 to get those working papers. And I worked in the factory in the summers with my cousins and my mother. And I recognized how hard my mother was working, how my father had worked for us, how difficult that job was. And then one day, the foreman screamed at me. And I looked at him and I said, I quit and someday I'll be your boss. And I walked out. And from that moment on, I understood the power of education, the power to move my family out of the factory, to be there for them, to help them. And then I have my nieces and nephews all now have gone to college or are going to college. And the passion for me that I am now the chancellor of the California State University, the largest system in the country, those that represent the low income, the first generation students of color and adults, the new majority of America, and that I'm playing a small part in ensuring that every student can reach its potential. That's my passion. I want to give back because public higher education gave it to me as well. So that is why I love being it, and that's how I know about the passion of higher ed and why we need to move forward and continue lifting the CSU.
Thank you, Chancellor. Now, Chair Fong, would you share?
Well, I think my story is similar to so many of you in the audience in that it's a very typical immigrant story. My grandparents came to this country over 120 years ago from China. And they came here in the midst of the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first law created to keep a people out of America. But they had this dream of coming to Meiguo, which actually translates in Chinese to beautiful country. And California is called Golden Mountain. So that was the vision of my grandparents, coming to this country, the land of opportunity. And I often heard my mother say to me growing up, you know, the reason why your grandparents came to this country was so that their children and grandchildren would never have to lift anything heavier than a pencil, all afforded to us because of education, higher education. And my mother's parents settled in San Francisco. In fact, my mom was born on Grant Avenue, San Francisco. My father's parents settled in Sacramento. My mother's father held 4 jobs as a cook, working so hard, persevering, being determined, all 4 of my grandparents. And my mother and I were really fortunate to go to China in 1980. And we went to the Fong village, and I saw what my life would have been had not my grandparents had the courage, the determination to leave China, come to the United States, because much like Millie's family, education was what afforded us this incredible life in the United States. I saw my life in China. I would have been working, back-breaking work, working in a rice paddy, and I would have been praying to work in a factory. So with education, I just think about how so many of our students are at the cusp of an incredibly bright future. And as Millie was saying, as the Chancellor was saying, to be part of the California State University, I can only imagine how my grandparents, my parents would feel if they knew that their granddaughter, their daughter, was the chair of the board of the greatest university in the nation, the California State University.
Thank you both so much for sharing those stories. In preparation for this event, we collected questions from students across the CSU system. I like to get through as many of those questions as possible, so here we go. From CSU Bakersfield, Chancellor Garcia, as you rose to your ranks in your career, did you encounter any systemic barriers that hinder women and minorities from advancing into leadership positions? And can you share an example or two on what can be done to address them?
Wow, which ones do I pick, right? So yes, I did encounter, just remember that when I was going to school, I'm not gonna tell you the age and what the year was, but when I went to school, there were very few women in positions of power, and there were very few teachers of color and people of color in power. And so for me, as I went through, I encountered things, and I'll talk a little bit about my profession. When I gave a speech for the very first time, and one of my colleagues said, "Oh, you speak English so well." And I said, "So do you." And so, you know, I had those things. Then I also had, when I was a president, I mean, you still get it. They are not as much, but you still get some. When I became a president, I won't tell you where I was president. I was president 3 times, you can't guess. So I became president, and I had to look for an athletic director. And 3 gentlemen who were donors came to see me in my office. And they said, we want to help you to hire athletic director, and we'll lead it with you. And I said, why? They said, well, we don't know if you know that much about sports. Little did they know that my father and my whole family are sports fiends, and I sat in front of that television since I was a kid. And so I had to thank them very much and told them that I understood sports, thank you, and that they could be in the open town hall and give comments, but I was in charge of hiring the athletic director. And then the other, I would give you one more. When you're a student and you are one of few, I was one Latina and one African-American in school in one of my classes. They thought that I knew Jerry Garcia. Of course, I know every Jerry Garcia in the country. And they didn't know where Puerto Rico was. And I had to explain that I was Puerto Rican. I was not Hawaiian, that I used to have long black hair at the time, so it's different. And that, no, I wasn't Hawaiian, that I was Puerto Rican, that I do speak the language, and that, yes, Puerto Ricans are United States citizens. So I had to explain all of that. But the truth is, the students have to speak up and correct people civilly and tell them where they're wrong and hold on to their true selves and explain to people, educate them, talk to them, debate them, because there are still some sectors, unfortunately, in this country that have to be educated. And so that's what I would say what students need to do, is make sure that they move forward and talk about who they are, what's their power, how they will work civilly and talk across lines.
Thank you, Chancellor, for sharing those stories. Chair Fong, I have a similar question for you from San Jose State. Did you ever feel you missed any opportunities due to your gender or race? And looking back at your journey, do you have any of those regrets?
So I have been so fortunate to have an incredible journey in the entertainment industry. It is a career that, actually I'm celebrating my 50th year, and I mean, I never had the intention of going into the entertainment business, and it was because I went to college, and it was an Asian American studies professor, that was my major, who suggested that I audition for a position as a talk show host in Los Angeles, and much to my amazement, I got it. And this career that I've had is beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, to have worked with some of the greatest artists in the world, from Elvis, Sinatra, Streisand, to Michael Jackson, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, and just everyone in between. But I do have to say that there have been times where it was a struggle. It was a struggle because being the first, being the only, was difficult. And you ask if I had a particular experience, and I can tell you a very blatant one, where I was being interviewed for a producer position for a situation comedy, a sitcom. And the executive producer was interviewing me, and he actually said, you know, you're perfect for this position. Your experience, your contacts, the theme of the show just fits with you perfectly. But he goes, I've never worked with a woman before, and I have to tell you, I'm uncomfortable with that, and so I'm going to hire a man instead. And so that was just blatant, you know, all out. I'm sure that if it were the case today, he would be smart enough not to say that. But obviously he was comfortable enough to tell me he was uncomfortable to work with me. But to just sort of draw from what the theme is, Journeys to Leadership, what I learned along the way is that I did not want people who followed me, particularly women and people of color, to struggle as I did. So I formed organizations. And one of the organizations I co-founded was CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. And I'm really proud to say we started in 1991. It is the largest, longest running, preeminent organization for APIs in the entertainment industry. And we formed it so that we could have connections, that we could support each other, that if we had any issues or problems that we were facing, we could turn to each other and support each other. So that's something that, a lesson that I learned and that possibly can be shared with our students today.
Thank you, Chair Fong. Turning back to you, Chancellor Garcia. From Sonoma State, the next question is, what is one thing that still needs to change on behalf of minorities within the higher education system? And what can student leaders do to help?
I think number one, language matters. The word minority is no longer relevant. We are the new majority of America. And the CSU personifies that, where we bring in people from all over the state, from different backgrounds, and that we have to own our place, that we have voice, that we have to move forward, that we have to make sure that we are transforming our institutions. And how can students do that? Well, students can do that by getting involved. Now, there may be adults that can't get involved because you're working, but there are other ways of being involved. Maybe online, getting involved online with our students. Maybe you're good at something, being a tutor. As you're a young person, I say, get involved in your organizations. I was a member of Latin Unity in my community college, and I became the secretary, and I then moved up the rank through Latin Unity to become the president. And it was about learning more about my culture. It was the most important thing. But then Latin Unity got together with the African Americans, with the few Asian Americans, and we all got together, we learned about each other. And I even remember working with the Jewish students, and I remember speaking to this young woman. We all learned that they don't put cheese on cheeseburgers. And I had to explain that to me because I love cheeseburgers. But it's the learning of different cultures, of having voice, of moving the institution forward, of being part of your second home. Our campuses are your homes. They're where you become a leader, where you can change things that you feel you need to give voice to. And you could do that at all of our campuses at the CSU and walk out being wonderful leaders in our community and in your professions.
Thank you, Chancellor, for highlighting how our campuses are our second homes. And back over to you, Chair Fong. A student from San Diego State wonders how to make a name for themselves in a large university with more than 30,000 students. What are some strategies a young person might use to stand out in a competitive environment or competitive career field?
Well, I think the best thing that you can do is for you to become the best you. So we are each given gifts. I believe that God has given us individually gifts and that it is our responsibility to fulfill them to the nth degree. So with whatever you believe in, whatever you feel that you can draw from, that is what I think is the most important thing. You will always find someone who is smarter. You will always find someone more beautiful and more talented. And so what you can do is to be that best person. And how you can shine is doing more than is expected. And frankly, that is something that was taught by me and my family. To do more than that expected. And I know that the Chancellor has worked harder than any person to get into the position that she is today. And I can give you some examples that in my journey that when I started, so I was on camera for several years, but then I started at the bottom of the ladder working in production. And I saw that the copy room was just in a disarray. So I went in and I organized it. Then I saw that the office supply room was in a disarray, and I realized, oh, there are a lot of things that are missing. So I went to the person that was in charge of the office and I said, would you mind if I organized it and came up with a list of office supplies that needed to be reordered? She goes, great, you're now in charge of that. So it's that kind of thing where you just do more. If you see something that needs to be done, of course, if it's inappropriate for you to do it without asking somebody, ask the person first. But I actually have a colleague that when she would hire somebody, like an intern or a production assistant, she would just put a box in the middle of a room. And she wouldn't say anything about it. And sort of as a test, if the person that she had just hired said, would you like me to do something with that box? She thought, that's somebody who is going beyond what's being told. She actually had some people that would just walk around the box, walk around it. So it's just those things. Again, there are so many opportunities for you, particularly as students, where you can shine, where you can be the leader of your study group or help people. That is something where if you can create an opportunity for others to succeed, you will succeed as well.
Thank you, Chair Fong. Next, I'd like to ask Chancellor Garcia a question that came up a few times from various universities. What are your plans for fostering a supportive and inclusive campus culture for students, faculty, and staff?
From the very beginning, I have to be a role model. I have to make sure that I'm in the office with the people I work with and make sure they have a culture of care and environment that is accepting of different perspectives, that we could talk and have debates, and that we can continue to move forward the university. But I also have to work with our presidents. We have 23 amazing, diverse presidents throughout the CSU, and work with those presidents to ensure that our campuses become welcoming. That not only are we welcoming our students where they see themselves on campus, but they're working with the community and they're working with the families. Many of our students know that their families play a major role in what college they go to, how long they stay, what are they doing, what are they majoring in, and understanding your communities in their language and in their space is so important. That our students feel, like I said earlier, that it's their second home, and that we're inviting people to the amazing events that we have on our campuses, the arts and sciences, the sports, the lectures, all of the things that our fabulous faculty do on our campus should not only be for our students, we should be inviting our communities in so they could see the jewel and the impact of our universities to them, their children, and the environment and community in which they live. We have to become those universities that are part of the community. They are anchors within our community. We are stewards of place.
Thank you, Chancellor. I loved hearing that. The next question is for both of you from a student at San Diego State. You've heard a lot of anger and protests from students as a result of a recent tuition increase. What kind of advocacy would you encourage students to take in situations where they feel underrepresented or negatively impacted, whether it's in education or in the business world? So let's start with Chancellor Garcia.
I believe in the students' right to protest civilly. By the way, I did protest when I was a college student. I was out there marching like all the rest. But what we did was we got together and we did our homework. We learned our facts. We did it civilly. One of the things I will say is you want people to listen when you protest. You want people to hear you. When you come out angry, when you make it personal attacks, when you are too caustic, people shut off. They're not listening to you anymore. But if you speak, passionately, yes, but with civility and kindness to get your point across, people will listen. I know all of our presidents allow their protests in a place, in whatever place it is. That is your right. That is why we live in this country. It's how we protest, how we get our message across that is so extremely important as we go across our campuses to hear our voice. Students have voice. Students are assets. We want to hear those voices, but we want to hear them in the appropriate protesting way, which is with civility so that you'll be listened to.
Thank you, Chancellor. Chair Fong?
I couldn't agree more than what the Chancellor just said. And I think what I want to convey to you is that we need you to be part of the solution. So just as the Chancellor, when I was in college, I also was protesting. And one particular issue that was so important to my friends and colleagues was the lack of representation of APIs on television and on the film screen. When we were depicted, it was either the dragon lady or the geisha or the evil Japanese World War II soldier or the subservient houseboy. And so we formed an organization, Asian Americans for Fair Media. It was with students and actually some faculty members as well. And we figured out a way to reach the networks, the studios, and to try to help them understand how representation matters and that a broad range of fair, reasonable representation matters. So I know that that is an issue that, so many of our students still feel this way. So that was working outside of the system. Working within the system, again, as I said, several of us had co-founded CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. And we are people that are in the industry working within to make changes and to just offer what our audiences want. And then I'm also a member of the Directors Guild of America. And again, with representation, co-founded the Asian American Committee for the Directors Guild. So there are ways that, yes, you can affect change by doing it from the outside or on the inside. But just as the Chancellor was saying, it's so important that you know what your issue is, you know what the facts are, that you do the research, and that you are able to communicate in a way where you are effective, that you are producing the results that you want, as opposed to, as the Chancellor was saying, coming at people where they can just shut you off and not listen. That's not what you want. You want to be able to communicate with people. Hopefully they will, take it in. And the best thing would be collaboration.
Thank you both for those thoughtful responses. This next question came from students at multiple universities, and it's for Chair Fong. What does it take for a leader to motivate and inspire people? And is there a certain characteristic or characteristics that the leader needs to have?
Well, I guess in my journey, what I've learned is that for people that I have admired and have been inspired by, it is because they so believed in what they were doing, what their passion was. And so it is for me being that model of inspiration, hopefully, that model that motivates. And I mean, that is the reason why I'm just so honored and thrilled to be a trustee of the California State University, because I so believe in our mission. I so believe in the elevation, the education of our students, because it changes families, it changes family trees, it changes communities, and of course it affects our state and our nation and actually the world. I don't know if you want to, add anything to that, Chancellor.
For me, it's my passion of giving back. Mm-hmm. I have seen the transformation in my family. My nieces and nephews no longer say, am I going to college? They ask, which college am I going to? Mm. And I remember my nieces speaking, now they're adult, these nieces are adults now. They said, oh, we hated you because Dad, who's one of the eldest brothers, would look at us and say, look at your Titi Millie, you gotta go to college, look at what's going on with her. And so for me, it's giving back. The dream, I never dreamed that I would become a chancellor, never dreamed I would become a president. This has all been because of amazing mentors and people at colleges and universities, just like the CSU, that took me under their wing and said, you have more potential. When I was at the community college, I started at the community college, they told me, you have more potential, go for the bachelor's degree. Because at that time, think about the opportunities that you have today. I know it seems like ancient history to some of you, but when you think about the opportunities in my family, you could either be a nurse. For a woman, it was either a nurse or a secretary, but not work in a factory. The brothers were lawyers and doctors, but not the women. And here I am, the chancellor of the CSU. And being a secretary, by the way, I did do secretarial work. Take the job because it's the power of the pen. You write the story. When you take those minutes, you're the one that's writing that story. And then that opens up all the doors for you because people started to see, just like Chair Fong said, your capacity, what you can do. And when you go above and beyond and write that story, you're making history, although you're not being recognized for it. So what I will say is that these students need to continue to lift and continue to do this wonderful work because they have so many opportunities with the faculty who are diverse, the presidents who are diverse, the vice presidents who are diverse, helping them to move forward.
So actually, to add to that, I think it is one thing that college is so exciting is that you can find what you love. You can find what your passion is. That's what happened for me. And if you are passionate about something, if you really care about something, you yourself will become motivated and inspired. And that will hopefully feed, other people will feed off of that. So I think that's just a small example.
Thank you both for those responses. Our next question is about advice to students considering a career in higher education. So Chancellor Garcia, as a first-generation Latina graduate and national leader in higher education, what advice would you offer?
So I'll speak a little bit about my journey and how I got into administration because that was not my idea at all. Remember, my family thought I was going to be a secretary or a nurse. But when I went to college, it started to bubble up there. And the first experience I had in the community college, I went and I worked as a college work-study student in financial aid. And there they made me a financial aid advisor. As an advisor, they put me through professional development programs on how to advise students, how to work with students. And I started to get that little touch of, is this something that I can do? Is this a position that I would like? And off I went to the four-year institution and said, I think I'm thinking about this. But then I went off to be a teacher. And there I became a leader because there was no teaching jobs in New York City at that time. So I went to New Rochelle and became a teacher in a Catholic high school. And there I became a leader with the students and understanding different cultures. I was one of the few people that was bringing in a different culture and helping them understand that although I taught business subjects, they also wanted to know more about Latinos and what were we doing. We were called Hispanics and Puerto Ricans at the time to learn about that. And I started to realize there's a potential. Then I was hired at a community college and I started to do things like running the honors program for the community college, creating a business major for the liberal arts students so that they would have some business background. And they started to see potential. And then one day, the then vice president calls me into her office and she's fighting with the chair of my department. And they're saying, she can go. Yes, she can. She's going up. No, she can. And it turns out they were fighting about me. And I said, could someone tell me what you guys are talking about? And it turns out that she wanted to take me to be her, at that time it was called executive assistant to the president. So my chair walks out, I sit with her, she says, I've just been offered the presidency of Hostos Community College. I'd like you to become my executive assistant to the president. And I said, I have worked too hard to be your secretary. I didn't put myself through college to be a secretary. And she started to laugh. And she explained to me what this position was. It was the best administrative position I ever had because it opened up the door of what a university looks like from the eyes of a president. I was a president's right hand. I advocated in Albany. I advocated on the Hill. I was in charge of what they called the CUNY Legislative Action Committee, that I would put together faculty, staff, students, union, everybody, community, to go up to Albany and over to Washington. She allowed me to do that. She also sent me out to speak in her name. So I am out in the community speaking. The vice presidents are coming to me to talk to her, and then I would be the one saying, no, you don't need to talk to her. I can figure that one out. And I did more. Like you said, I did more. And off I went. And then what do I tell students? So that's what started my career as an administrator. I would have stayed teaching probably. I love teaching. I'm schizophrenic. I like research and I like teaching. I like it both, and I like administrating. So I like a little bit of everything. And so that started it. And then when I finished my doctorate, which I was doing while being the executive assistant and then the vice president of student affairs, my dissertation sponsor said you have to apply for another job outside of New York, and it was at Montclair State. And then I became associate vice president for academic affairs. It was fabulous. But I will say to students, if you're interested in a higher ed, start by getting involved right now on your campus. Find that college work study position. Find that student assistance position. Try to go around the different places to see what calls to your heart. It has to call you. You have to love it. For me, what I loved was I was helping students. I was helping students in financial aid. I was helping students when I became vice president for student affairs. I was helping students all the time. And I said, this is where I want to spend my career, because I'm helping people that come from communities like mine. And the passion really came, my first presidency, students came up to me, and I'll never forget this, and they said, we hear you're from the Farragut Housing Projects. And I looked at him and I said, 233 Sand Street, 17G was my apartment. And he said, oh my God, you're from my project. I said, and yes, you can go wherever you want to go. And that's what I tell our students. Find your passion, study the field, because there is a field, a very rich field of higher ed, but start now. Start by being in those offices. Find those, may it be in the arts, may it be in student affairs, may it be in academic affairs or finance, even the students that are in business. And you could find a place and say, because you know what? When you're around young people, you never get old. And so that's the other thing that happens when you're in a college and university.
Can I just ask, what about students that are older?
I think the same thing goes, I would say, yes, if you're working and you're interested in higher ed, there are plenty of online programs now that we've never had before. You can study online. Many institutions have it now that you could take a course online, take the necessary background to understand. And I remember when I was taking these courses, I would say, oh, I'm already doing this, but this is the theory behind it, right? So you get that information and continue, then look for a mentor. Even if you're an adult, someone you admire, that you can speak to often, and go up to them and say, I've been watching you. And I did that while I was in my career. I would watch people that I admired, and I would go up to them and say, I love the way you're running this. I would love to learn more from you. Would you be my mentor? And 99% of the time they said yes. And so get a mentor as well if you're an adult.
And if I could add to that, it's not only learning the good things from a person, but also I learned a lot from working with people that I did not like how they worked with people or handled situations in a way. So it's also that way. It's just absorbing as much as you can, being aware, but also, you know, when you have incredible mentors or role models such as the Chancellor, they're all around you. But if you feel that you cannot connect with a person, for one thing, we're just so fortunate that we have the internet, that we can learn so much about a person's pathway, how they did it. And so I find that really helpful in how another person attained their position.
Thank you both for those responses. I might reconsider and, try to get into higher education when I come back or something. Maybe I'll do a program at CSUCI.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Online, maybe too, as well.
I say, good morning, Daisy.
This last question is for both of you. When you have a chance to relax and get away from work, what do you do for fun? So let's start with Chancellor Garcia.
Those few moments that I have to have for fun, there's so many things. Let me bring it back to travel. I'll start with travel. Traveling opens the world for you, but it also helps you to learn different cultures. And I started traveling thanks to my church a long time ago. I was the first one in my neighborhood to graduate from the community college of my cohort. And the church put money together and sent me to Spain, something my mother couldn't afford as a widower. I spent the whole summer in Spain. I almost didn't come back. But it was a learning experience about opening up to cultures. It perfected my Spanish. and I was able to travel the country. And that opened up a passion, and I started traveling. But as an administrator, I started to take advantage of the Fulbright programs. And what I will tell students is, if you can get into those Fulbright programs, do it. I was a Fulbright with France and Germany. I went to a Fulbright in Jordan and Oman. And all of them taught me the power of education throughout the country, the differences and the similarities, the opportunities that you could have in another country to study. As a matter of fact, when I went over to France, they took us to a school, a university, very similar to our diverse institutions at the CSU. It was very surprising to me that they were so diverse. And who do I see there? There were 2 students there, one from Cal State San Diego, and one from CUNY in New York. Both students of color studying in France. And what I will say to students is traveling opens the world. It helps you come back and understand the different cultures, that our country has changed demographically, and that for us to have peace and civility in this country is you have to understand, really understand, the people that come from all over the world to continue to lift our country. So I would say definitely travel. I love to dance. I will say I love to dance. I broke my wrist once dancing, but that's a story for another day. I love music. I love museums. I love to read, and I love Broadway plays. So that's why I go home pretty often, as much as I can, to see Broadway plays. But it's about enriching your life. For me, it's about learning more. And everything that I do is I learn. You're learning constantly. And those opportunities to get a Fulbright, to go overseas, to have an opportunity to see a museum that has different cultures and learn from the docents there, it's just an amazing experience and an opportunity. And you have that here in California in spades. So many opportunities that you could be part of.
And actually, Chancellor, if you can talk about our study abroad programs that we avail our students, where they can travel inexpensively while getting an education.
The beauty of the CSU is that we have programs that are short term. There used to be you had to go for a semester or you had to go for a whole year. Now, thanks to the presidents and the faculty and their teams in student affairs and study abroad, we now have programs that you could do it like a month. We could do them in 3 weeks. You can do so that you can go and see the experience that is different. The other thing you can do, which we did at Fullerton when I was there, you could have yourself immersed in a neighborhood with family. So, for example, we have I want to say we, I can still say we. At Fullerton, we have someone who is very immersed in Westminster, which is the Vietnamese town of the city, as the largest Vietnamese population outside of Saigon. And you would go in there and meet with families and talk to families and sit with families or stay with families. That's an experience too. So you could have those kind of experiences, or you could do short-term experiences, or if you're fortunate enough, you could have a semester or a year. But you have different options now that doesn't pull away students who can't afford it. Because what we did at Fullerton was we raised money. We raised money, and for us the criteria was you had to never had a passport, never been on a plane, never been out of California, and they would have this experience. And I will tell you, they come back transformed. And when I put people in front of the donors and they would speak about it, they would give more money because they saw the transformation of what happened to our students.
Great.
Thank you, Chancellor. To add to that, how would a student ask, as a fellow Latina, like asking your parents, I'm gonna go study in Spain for 6 months. They're not gonna, they say, no, what do you mean you're going away for 6 months?
So Daisy, my mother was very apprehensive, especially because I'm a social butterfly. And so it was having, the truth of the matter was having the people from church talk to her. But also I think the student affairs people are they're very equipped to talk to families and say, she's gonna be fine. There's going to be a faculty member with them, especially Latinas. I know how parents are. That was where my mother was with me. So having to talk to the student affairs people, maybe even one of the vice presidents, to encourage. And what parents want to know is that you're going to be as safe as possible. You're never 100% safe, but as safe as possible, that you're going to learn all the precautions, that you're going to learn how to study in a country. So those are the things that happen. You know, the news super intensifies some of the few things that happen. But by and large, thousands and thousands of students travel overseas and come back transformed.
Thank you so much, Chancellor. Now, Chair Fong, what are some of the ways that you relax when you're not working?
Well, I do have to reflect off of what the Chancellor was saying, because so my father died when I was 7 years old, and my mother was left with 5 children, ages 3 to 16. And one thing that was just so amazing was that she introduced us to travel as well. And it opened a world for us. It opened a world of wanting to know about others, but also having empathy for others, understanding others. So it's such an incredible experience. And so I completely underscore what the Chancellor was saying about travel. But I have to say that for some people, they know about my not so secret obsession, which is I love BTS. So for those of you who don't know BTS, they are the most fabulous Korean boy band in the world. And okay, yes, I am, their fans are called ARMY, so I am a member of the Silver Army. But as my poor husband knows, I start my day with BTS and I end my day with BTS. They make me so happy. But one of the reasons why I just so adore them, they're 7, they happen to be gorgeous men who are extremely talented. They're fabulous singers. They're incredible dancers. They are the best entertainers. But if I had them to love as a age-appropriate person, teenager, as role models, oh my gosh, how that would have just helped me in my journey. I just find it so thrilling that people around the world adore this group, and not only what they perform, but what they stand for as well. I mean, they've spoken at the UN, they've performed at the UN. So, I mean, it is actually a culmination of what I have hoped for APIs in the entertainment industry.
Thank you both for your responses. I'll make sure to join you at the next BTS
Yes.
concert. Last, I'd like to give each of you a chance to share some final thoughts with us. So let's start with Chancellor Garcia.
So we have some time to be expansive.
So I'm going to begin by saying, never let anybody stop you from your dream. I went to a high school in Bensonhurst. I remember I said I was one Latina and one African American in my graduating class. I was told by my guidance counselor, you will never make it through college. And I said, watch me. You have to remember, I was speaking to Jessica earlier, never let anybody stop your dream. If you have the passion and the commitment to move forward, do it. And it continues to happen. People will try to put barriers for you to not go forward. I remember when I was looking for a doctoral program, an institution that shall remain nameless, which is now illegal, by the way, told me that they didn't want to accept me in the PhD program because women walked into that program, got pregnant, and didn't finish. I walked away from that program, even though I could afford it, but it was because another institution welcomed me with open arms, and I went there instead. It didn't stop my dream, I just went through a different door. So you have to find ways to continue in your dream, to work at it as hard as you can. It is, for some reason, some people see you and sometimes want to bar you because of who you are and what you represent. And it is up to us to move the needle forward. It is why I am so passionate about working as hard as I do. It's not that I'm proud of being the first. It's about being the first and opening the doors for others. Who's coming after me to take this job? Because I'm not going to be in this job forever. And that's what the first does. Like Chair Fong, like me, there have been other women that have come after us in the positions that we have had. And being a first is just shattering that glass ceiling a little bit and keep opening it up so other people can come in. So I would say that. I would say work, prove your worth and have voice respectfully, but prove your worth. Hold on to your place. Especially as women and people of color, sometimes people don't want to listen, but you just need to continue to be chief reminder officers of who you are and what you do and how well you do it. And it is true that we have to work 200% better than most to even be recognized, but that's okay. Because not only are you reaching your goal, you're reaching the goal for others in your family and for people behind you. As I look at my family, they are now in very different places. And it's all thanks to my family and to my parents who sacrificed everything. They didn't know the language. They came here to give up everything. And like you said, if my parents saw my mother was able to see me get my first presidency, she cried. So now my sisters and brothers go wherever I'm awarded something, they come. Because they are also very proud of their little sister. But it's so important that you continue to move the needle. And that's why I'm so passionate about the CSU. My favorite days are graduation. When you see families come in jumping for joy. And I always tell students when they tell me, oh, I don't want to go to graduation. I say, it's not about you. It's about your family. If you're an adult, it's about your wife or your husband or your significant other and your children. If you're a young person, it's your family, your aunts, your uncles, your grandmother who saw you go through this. And you see people come in their natural cultural garb and you see them crying and jumping for joy and you see all the flowers and the leis and everything else. That's what the CSU represents. That we are representing to lifting up the new majority of America. That's my passion. And that's why the CSU is so important. Why it's so important that you continue to hold the flag. Hold the flag for your institution and hold the flag for the CSU. And then become those amazing alumni who give back to the CSU. May it be resources if you're lucky to have it, or because of you get involved and mentor someone that's in the same discipline that you graduated from. That's what the CSU is about. That is what leadership is about. And I will say you can be a leader no matter what you do. You can be a leader everywhere you work. By helping others, by helping your institution, by helping your family, by helping your community.
Thank you, Chancellor. Chair Fong, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, I hope that you are really listening to our stories. In that, we did not have a clear pathway to where we are today. Particularly for me in the entertainment industry, there is no simple alignment of a career. It was a road that was wending left and right, up and down, up and down. And I'm sure that in your lives, you feel that way as well. And I want you to listen to the Chancellor's story or those that you admire around you. I mean, for example, President Yao's story, that it may not be what you were thinking about, but every experience that you have had in your life will make you better. It will give you that experience. I mean, I just love I'm going to be 73 in May.
You're not Puerto Rican.
Yes. I'm not, because the Chancellor will never tell me how old she is.
The Puerto Rican women don't do that.
But I am so grateful to be this age, because for one thing, my father died at such a young age, that for me to reach this age, but it's the experience that I have had, this incredible journey that has led me to a place that I never, ever would have expected. So one thing that was in me was when I was first asked if I wanted to consider being a talk show host, my immediate answer was no. But then I thought over the weekend, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I mean, what's the worst? As my mother would say, they can't kill you. And so I walked through that door. Of course, I had never been on television before. I had no experience hosting a show or producing a show, but I taught myself really quickly. And I think that's another thing, is that as you take a step forward in your career or up that rung, that proverbial rung of, ladders, that you just prepare yourself as well as you can be to follow people that are role models to you, that are mentors to you, but also to do as much that you can to educate yourself to be the best that you can be. And again, it is using all the talents that you have been given and just making them as strong as you can, but also finding what your passion is. Because once you find that passion, you'll enjoy it. You'll have, you'll want to do even more. And when I was given this incredible opportunity to be a trustee for the CSU, I didn't know higher ed, but I made sure that I learned really quickly, and I'm constantly learning. And again, to be in this place in my life, learning never stops. It should not stop. And to be the chair of the board of trustees for, again, the greatest 4-year public university system in the nation. I am so proud to be a part of it, to be working, to be associated with this chancellor, with our vice chancellors, with our incredible presidents, our faculty and staff, our students, our alumni. It just fills me up to be able to tell our story. I find it so amazing that we are not only the largest, but 1 out of 10 employees in the state of California is a graduate of the CSU. And 1 out of 20 college degree holders in the entire United States is a graduate of the CSU. And you are part of that. And so thank you so much. Thank you for the work, the support, and what our students are going to become, a reflection of this great university. I'm just so proud to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chancellor Garcia and Chair Fong. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions and joined us today, whether it was virtually or in person. It took many people to make this production possible. And I want to thank President Yao and our entire team at CSUCI.
Yay!
As well as the staff at the Chancellor's office for helping to produce this event.
Yes.
This live stream has been recorded and will be available for viewing at calstate.edu. Thank you all for your participation, and goodbye.